At 61, Stephen Colbert vanished from late-night TV in the blink of an eye. No warning. No farewell.
One moment he was America's voice of reason, then gone.
What happened in that studio was so personal, so explosive, it forced him to walk away from everything, forever.
Before we uncover the shocking truth behind Stephen Colbert's sudden exit, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more untold celebrity stories, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a moment that mainstream media won't show you.
Stephen Colbert had built a reputation that was almost untouchable in late-night television.
For nearly a decade, he reigned as the witty, politically sharp host of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, guiding millions of Americans through nightly doses of humor, satire, and clarity amidst chaos.
His show wasn't just entertainment, it had become a cultural cornerstone.
But on one unusually quiet Monday afternoon, Colbert walked off the CBS lot and never returned.
It wasn't planned. It wasn't a farewell tour. It wasn't even broadcast. There was no confetti.
No final hug with Jon Batiste. No teary-eyed goodbyes from his production crew. He simply vanished from the stage that had defined his post-Colbert Report legacy. What led to this sudden exit wasn't scandal, nor was it failure. It was something far more personal and, to Colbert, unavoidable.
The week began like any other.
Colbert arrived at the studio in his signature gray blazer, coffee in hand, thumbing through headlines with his writing team. He laughed with his stage manager over a joke that had bombed the night before, already thinking about how to revive it with a better punchline. Nothing in his demeanor suggested that within 48 hours, he would be clearing out his office and severing ties with CBS. The trigger came not from within the studio, but from a call that interrupted his usual Monday production rundown.
It was from South Carolina.
His sister, Elizabeth, had reached out to say that their mother, who had been struggling with a long-term illness, had taken a dramatic turn for the worse. While this wasn't the first time the family had faced medical scares, something in Elizabeth's voice told Stephen that this was different.
Colbert's heart sank.
Though he had juggled personal grief and public performance for years, having lost his father and two brothers in a tragic plane crash when he was just 10, this hit differently. His mother, Lorna, had been the cornerstone of his healing, his humor, and his relentless faith. While she had passed in 2013, what Elizabeth was referring to was the failing health of their last surviving aunt, Aunt Pauline, who had taken on a maternal role in the years following Lorna's death. She had been his private sanctuary from the chaotic world of television, politics, and fame. In a single moment, the bright lights of The Late Show felt dim. Colbert sat in his dressing room, motionless, staring at a stack of cue cards. He didn't say a word during the production meeting.
He didn't rehearse the night's monologue.
And for the first time since 2015, he told the producers to cancel taping.
Audiences were turned away with little explanation. The network brushed it off as a minor schedule reshuffling. But those closest to Colbert knew that something deeper was unraveling. That night, instead of heading to his Manhattan apartment, Colbert boarded a private jet bound for Charleston. It wasn't a PR move. There were no paparazzi. No handlers.
Just Colbert, a duffel bag, and a heart full of unresolved feelings.
He arrived at the family home just after midnight.
Pauline was unconscious, her breathing shallow. The home nurse gave a polite nod, sensing the weight of the moment. Colbert stayed by her side the entire night.
He didn't sleep.
Instead, he thumbed through old photo albums, revisiting childhood memories, ones that had long been buried beneath political satire and celebrity interviews. He remembered how Pauline would scold him gently when he got too lost in books, reminding him to look up at the real world. She had been the last link to a pre-fame Stephen, the boy who loved Tolkien, hated attention, and once dreamed of becoming a marine biologist.
By morning, Pauline was gone. Colbert didn't cry. Not at first.
He simply walked out to the porch, sat down in the same wooden rocking chair his father had used decades ago, and stared at the garden Pauline had tended each spring.
The silence was a blanket.
It wrapped around him, not in comfort, but in clarity. He realized then that he was done pretending that fame didn't cost something. He had buried pain for years beneath scripts and applause.
But no longer.
2 days later, he returned to New York, not to resume his duties, but to end them.
The decision was swift. He walked into the executive producer's office, handed over a sealed envelope, and requested no press release, no tribute, no announcement. Just silence. CBS executives were stunned. They offered extended leave, therapy support, even the option to pre-record shows. But Colbert was resolute. The final blow came from a moment he hadn't expected. An old clip from his 2011 Colbert Report days resurfaced online. In it, he was mocking the very notion of legacy, claiming that the only thing that lives forever is what we pretend not to care about. It went viral again, ironically echoing the existential crisis he was now living through. For a man who had spent years hiding behind irony, the truth had arrived unironic and irreversible. That weekend, Colbert cleared out his office. He didn't speak to the media. His staff were sworn to secrecy. Rumors swirled online. Was he sick? Had he been fired? Was he preparing a political run? None were true. Colbert had simply reached his limit. He didn't want to become a caricature of himself, trapped in a cycle of laugh tracks and teleprompters. He wanted his life back, unfiltered, unmonologued, and untelevised. In the months that followed, fans were left guessing. His social media went dark. Late-night TV tried to move on, but the vacuum left behind was undeniable. CBS rushed to find a replacement, but none had the mix of intellect, empathy, and edge that Colbert had brought. The late show ratings began to dip. Viewers sensed the change. The authenticity was gone. Meanwhile, Colbert retreated to the Carolinas. He spent time rebuilding the old family estate with his siblings. He volunteered at a local literacy foundation, taught a few classes at a community college, and even quietly funded a media ethics initiative for young journalists. No cameras followed him. He asked his team to decline all interviews. But the story didn't end there. In late spring, whispers began to spread about a private project, something Colbert was quietly developing on his own terms. It wasn't a show. It wasn't a podcast. It was a reflective documentary series exploring the cost of public life, grief, and reinvention. Sources close to him claimed it featured deeply personal footage, unseen moments with his mother, his time as a struggling actor in Chicago, and raw insights into how comedy had both saved and haunted him. By autumn, the project leaked under the working title Stillness, A Life Beyond Applause. Colbert refused to confirm or deny its existence, but rumors indicated he was producing it independently, funding it entirely with his own savings, and planning to release it anonymously through a Creative Commons license. The industry didn't know what to make of it. Was it a message? A confession? A farewell? But for those who knew him best, it was neither resignation nor retreat. It was a redefinition. Colbert had not quit. He had evolved. In the absence of Stephen Colbert, the world of late-night television felt slightly off-kilter. The monologues lacked their usual punch, the satire felt rehearsed, and the competition among remaining hosts turned sharper, more performative, as if each of them were auditioning not just for viewers, but for some invisible crown Colbert had left behind. Critics weighed in. Op-eds debated whether Colbert's exit marked the beginning of the end for late-night comedy. Some called it an act of surrender. Others, a quiet revolution. His departure had been so abrupt, so deliberately understated, that it became a blank canvas onto which the public projected their own ideas of burnout, grief, and artistic freedom. Meanwhile, Colbert refused to explain himself. In the Carolinas, he found solace in the physical labor of rebuilding fences, pruning trees, repainting old barn doors, and replacing worn shutters. It wasn't performance, it was presence. The land held his father's footsteps, his brother's laughter, and now Pauline's absence. Here, he wasn't a host, a celebrity, or a commentator. He was just Stephen, son of Lorna, brother of Elizabeth, neighbor to the folks who had never cared about Nielsen ratings or Emmy speeches. Old friends visited him quietly, some from the comedy world, others from college days. They didn't ask questions. They just sat with him. And it was in these unspoken exchanges that Colbert began to understand something he had never had time to confront before. He had spent decades reacting to politics, to tragedy, to public expectation. But now, for the first time in his adult life, he was allowed to act freely.
One particularly windy afternoon, as he strolled past a field overgrown with wildflowers, Colbert paused at a crumbling stone bench where his mother used to sit and read. There, the idea crystallized, not of a comeback, but of a contribution. He wasn't interested in reclaiming a spotlight. He wanted to ignite others. The old showbiz joke, "leave them wanting more," suddenly carried sacred meaning. Maybe stepping away was the most powerful punchline he'd ever delivered. But even in retreat, the world wouldn't let go of Stephen Colbert. At CBS headquarters, internal memos debated how to spin his exit without sparking a media frenzy. Executives feared the ratings plunge would embolden streaming giants to poach their remaining viewers. Colbert had been a pillar. Without him, the architecture trembled. His production crew, many of whom had followed him loyally from the Colbert Report days, were left stunned but not bitter. They respected the choice, even if they didn't understand it. Some quietly transitioned to new projects. Others took time off themselves. A few sent him handwritten letters, most of which went unanswered, though each was read. Then came the leak. A member of a private editing firm, contracted under strict NDA, posted anonymously on a niche documentary forum, "I just watched a rough cut of the most honest piece of media I've ever seen." No credits. No music. Just a man, a microphone, and a lifetime of ghosts. The post went viral. Reddit threads exploded. Speculation ran wild. Stillness, a life beyond applause became legend before it was even released. And when it finally surfaced, dropped quietly on a minimalist website with no monetization, no logo, no branding, it hit like a seismic wave across every corner of the internet. It wasn't a documentary in the traditional sense. It was part memoir, part elegy, part visual meditation. In one scene, Colbert simply stared at an old photograph for 7 uninterrupted minutes while a storm gathered outside the window behind him. In another, he walked barefoot across a beach, narrating not a script, but thoughts. Raw. Unfiltered. At times painful. There were segments that dug into fame, the absurdities of meeting presidents, the surreal nature of being parroted by cartoons, the quiet horror of being recognized at your father's grave. He spoke of exhaustion. Of the way applause can drown out authenticity. Of the deep loneliness of being on when you're falling apart. And yet, it wasn't a work of despair. It pulsed with reflection, even hope. Colbert spoke of rediscovering the joy of silence. Of sitting with himself. Of relearning how to live without an audience. It was, in its truest sense, a gift to anyone who had ever felt lost in their own success. The film was downloaded millions of times in its first 48 hours. Universities used it in media ethics classes. Therapists recommended it to burned-out professionals. Spiritual leaders cited it in sermons about rest and renewal. Fellow comedians praised it as the most daring performance of his career, one where the character was finally dropped, and the man emerged. And still, Colbert stayed quiet. He did not attend film festivals. He did not accept awards. When Time named it one of the most important media moments of the decade, he declined comment. The man who had once skewered hypocrisy on national television 5 nights a week had nothing left to prove. Yet the world hadn't finished needing him. Months later, on the first anniversary of his departure, a letter from Stephen appeared in print, published not by a major outlet, but in a small Charleston newspaper. Titled "A Letter to the Quiet Ones," it spoke directly to those who had ever felt like walking away. It thanked the audience, not for watching, but for listening. For allowing a man to become more than the role he played. And in closing, it made one promise. "You'll see me again. But not on a stage. Not behind a desk. You'll know it when it matters." True to his word, Colbert remained mostly invisible for the next 2 years. Until one autumn morning, during a segment on a PBS special about forgotten American authors, a familiar voice narrated a passage from Wendellberry. "The real work is what we do when no one is watching, when no one is paying us, when no one will ever know." The credits rolled. No name attached. But the voice was unmistakable. And just like that, the world remembered. Not because of a new season, or a surprise appearance, or a trending hashtag, but because a man who had shaped national conversation through humor and intellect had now transformed the conversation around silence, rest, and the right to leave.
Stephen Colbert, at 61, didn't collapse under pressure. He chose peace.
He stepped away not in weakness, but in radical strength. In a world that rewards spectacle, he delivered stillness. And in doing so, he may have offered something even greater than laughter, permission. If this story moved you, share it with someone who might be wrestling with their own need for rest or reinvention. Stephen Colbert's journey is a reminder that even those who entertain the world must take time to reclaim their soul.
Like this video, subscribe for more untold stories, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next chapter.